You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network. For more quality options programs, visit www.theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app, available in iTunes and on Google Play. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options. Facebook.com/TheOptionsInsider or via questions at TheOptionsInsider.com.
At this time, we have the honor to hear congressional perspective of financial markets with Congressman Randy Hultgren of Illinois. Leading our discussion today is OCC President and Chief Operating Officer John Davidson. He leads the clearinghouse in the work on covered clearing agency rules and SEC regulation, SCI, part of OCC's responsibilities as a systemically important financial market utility. All of his work has a common intersection: Washington, D.C. Please welcome John Davidson and Congressman Randy Hultgren.
Well, good morning, everyone, or almost good afternoon. We're really honored today to have with us Congressman Randy Hultgren, hailing from Plano, Illinois, where he represents the 14th District of Illinois. Now, I don't think too many of you have made that trip out US 34 into Plano, but actually, if you saw the movie about 6 years ago called The Man of Steel, Smallville is actually Plano, Illinois, and the Kent family farm on their quarter section is a little more than a mile outside of town. So you've actually been to Plano, or if you haven't, get the movie on Netflix and check it out. Congressman Hultgren was first elected to Congress in 2010 and serves on the House Financial Services, Science, Space, and Technology committees. He also serves as the vice chairman of the Capital Markets Subcommittee. And in that role, he has an integral insight into the oversight of the U.S. financial services industry and its regulations. Congressman Hultgren has been at the center of legislative action in financial services issues, currently very engaged in a somewhat esoteric but very important to this industry issue related to having the appropriate level of risk-based bank capital rules. Those are having, as I think we've discussed a number of times earlier in the conference, a negative impact on particularly exchange-traded derivatives markets, and this is a topic of significant interest to all of us. Also like to point out that Congressman Hultgren's son, Cole, is with us today. Cole, stand up and wave to everybody. Now, tomorrow, Cinco de Mayo, is Cole's birthday, so I hope everybody who sees him in the hall will wish him a happy birthday. Congressman Hultgren is actually one of us. He worked in the financial services industry prior to being elected to Congress in 2010, and he has those wonderful credentials that a number of us have struggled through: the FINRA Series 7 General Securities, Series 6 Investment Management, and 63 Blue Sky or multi-state licenses. I didn't ask him backstage whether he was still current on his continuing education requirements, but I don't think House of Representatives is an appropriate broker-dealer, so probably those licenses are on hiatus. But it is really useful for our industry to have someone who's been personally involved and, as you'll learn today, deeply knowledgeable about our industry and financial services in general. So welcome, Congressman.
Thanks, John. Good to be with you.
So I'm, as you can see, kind of an old guy and pretty boring, and I don't have a Twitter account and I don't have a Facebook account, but even looking in the so-called mainstream press, it seems like Washington is polarized to an unprecedented extent these days. And so there's been a lot of change in Washington. What's your perspective on the environment, what it's like serving in Congress now compared to maybe how it was when you were first elected? What are the things that are actually fun, if there is such a thing in American politics these days for you? And what are the things that are a bit on the frustrating side from your perspective?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's one we discuss a lot. I travel around, talk to a lot of schools, high school students, and certainly the perception is that this is unprecedented, the amount of contention. I would argue that we've gone through cycles. You look back even at our founders. Thomas Jefferson and John Adams had some very famous battles, some very tough elections. John Quincy Adams against Andrew Jackson was brutal and a really tough time. So we have had certainly difficult times. Being from Illinois, having Illinois being so proud of Abraham Lincoln, certainly that was such a difficult time in our nation. So we've gone through tough times before. There's definitely contention. There is heightened animosity. But I would also say, if you dig in a little bit deeper, there are some really good relationships, good friendships, some opportunity to be working together. As I talk to my students that I get to get out and talk with quite a bit, to me it feels like there's really two groups in Washington, D.C. There's a group of leaders that lead our parties and have very important responsibility, and then there's a larger group of rank-and-file members of Congress who really don't have an interest in that. They just want to get something done. So leaders and kind of the role that they have, part of the job is we got to increase our numbers and decrease their numbers. And so I think things are contentious in those situations. Among rank-and-file members of Congress who just want to get something done, be effective, have some impact during the time of service, I think there's opportunity to connect, to talk, to get things done. And I would say, even in financial services, you look at some of the big issues, there has been contention, there have been some partisan divide, but then as we get into a lot of the details and more focused need to address regulation and change, those are bipartisan, and vast majority of the bills that have passed out of the Financial Services Committee, and then even the vast majority of bills that have passed out of the House. I think it's over 400 bills that have passed out of the House of Representatives in the last year and a half. Vast majority, 95% of them are bipartisan, and many of them are unanimous coming out of the House. So it doesn't get the focus of the media where they love the blood sport stuff, but reality is you step back a little bit and there is good cooperation. People still ask me what is the greatest surprise of serving in Washington, and one of my two big things I talk about, one is the vastness of bureaucracy. That is a surprise still. When you stand on Capitol Hill and look in literally every direction, it's government as far as you can see. So that's still a surprise, still a challenge to work through that. The other surprise for me is the quality of people I get to work with, that there really are great people who are trying to do the right thing, come from maybe very different areas than I come from, have a different perspective. That's okay. There's a level of respect there and desire to work together. And so the things I enjoy the most are those opportunities to work together. Some of the caucuses that we've got where it's completely bipartisan, where we've got to focus on an issue and we want to get something done. I'm co-chair of our FinTech caucus. We do a lot of really good, important things. I'm also co-chairman of the STEM Education Caucus. Work with Dan Lipinski, Democrat from Chicago area. I love that. Doing important work, encouraging young people to go into STEM fields, science, technology, engineering, and math. So to me, that's the fun stuff. I'm also co-chairman of our Human Rights Commission in Congress, and standing up and speaking out for people who are being abused here, around the world, mistreated. That's something that I really enjoy and feel like you can still make a difference.
And that's really important. So you mentioned STEM, and as you're certainly aware, this is a very quantitative industry. We
Yes.
have a lot of quants, particularly at some of our proprietary trading firms in Chicago, New York, Philadelphia. We at the OCC actually employ a fair number of them. And interestingly, several of them started in their careers working as physicists at a institution that's in your district, the so-called collar counties of Chicago, and that's Fermilab, a fabulous institution for pure science. And you've spent a lot of your career in Congress really advocating for science funding and really the importance thereof. So can you spend a little time talking about that? Because I think people don't usually think about that as a traditional path into financial services necessarily, but I think if you look among some of the Chicago specialist firms, there's a fair amount of that, actually.
There absolutely is, and I do love science, and I believe we as a nation are best when we are discovering, when we're exploring, when we're pushing ourselves, when we have a vision that we're going after. I grew up born in the mid-'60s, and some of my earliest memories were moonwalks, seeing that on TV, and literally as a very young child, the impression that made on me. But then as I've studied more and learned more of how that impacted everything else when we are engaged in pursuing big things, good things happen for a lot of other industries as well, and I certainly see it in financial services. I got to be at one of our great financial investment companies, financial services companies in Chicago this week. Incredible technology as I went around, and the investment in technology is mind-blowing, but also just the challenge that they have of hiring good people. So I was talking about that, of how do they do it, and their biggest focus, they said, was we need people who can get the technology. We can teach them the finance side of it in a couple days. They said that. I don't know if that's really true. But that the technology of it and this constant push for speed and data and access to information and pulling things together is what's so vital. So I love our national laboratories. Illinois has a lot of challenges, but I'm so proud of a couple things. One is the fact that we have two fabulous national laboratories, Fermilab and Argonne, which are absolutely on the forefront of science, but also the work that they do with our universities, with University of Chicago, with Northwestern, University of Illinois, Northern Illinois University. There is some great cooperation and opportunity for people to be engaged in gaining their education, but also working on literally cutting-edge, world-leading science projects. It's one of my favorite things when I go to Fermilab, and Cole and I love going there. We lived just a little ways away, so Cole and his brother would ride their bikes, and I would yell, "Slow down, wait for me," trying to keep up with them. But it's a beautiful place. But also one of the things that I love is walking into their different research projects that they've got, and they've got a listing of all the universities that are tied in, and sometimes it's dozens of different universities that have a direct connection of work that's happening in our national laboratories. So it honestly is this ecosystem of science and research that works. There's things that the federal government needs to do. There's a lot of things private sector can do, and we're certainly seeing that in space with great advancement there. Love a lot of the private sector investment in space, but I still think we need a vibrant NASA. We need vibrant laboratories to be working well. We need to do everything that we can to encourage smart young people to say these are great fields to go into. And I love it, too, that you can use that technology and programming along with a vital role in our markets. And free enterprise, to me, it's a great intersection, and I just want to continue to champion that.
Well, that resonates very much with me. My father was the head of the physics department at the University of Kansas for 15 years, and always had 2 or 3 people at Fermilab or Argonne. It's really a national treasure.
Yes.
So you mentioned investment and spending on investment that a lot of our technology-driven market-making firms do. One of the really significant accomplishments of the recent session of Congress was the passing of the tax reform bills. And obviously, in our case, we were very pleased in the options industry for what didn't pass, which is to say there wasn't any harmful legislation with respect to the treatment of listed options. And obviously, the tax treatment of listed options has been well established for several decades now. We certainly appreciate the contributions you made to getting us to the right place with a number of your colleagues. What's going on the tax reform front right at the moment? We hear some things about, to use the popular term, tax reform 2.0.
Yeah.
Is that really going to happen? Do you think we're going to get, Congress has maybe got some work to do between now and August, and then we go back to our districts to get reelected, hopefully?
Right.
Are we going to have a 2.0 this year?
I don't know. It's a good question. I wasn't sure if we'd actually get tax reform done as we're going into it. If you would have asked me a year and a half ago, I thought, there was maybe a 25% chance that we'd get it done, and then it happened. And so I was really encouraged. I think it was a good process. I think it was an open process, allowing a lot of voices to be heard. And I think, as you said, John, by and large, it's very good. As I travel around my district, 90% plus of people are seeing benefits from it. And even more than that, with the growing economy, I think tax reform is important. Let's have a tax code that doesn't punish productivity but encourages it. I think we've taken some steps. But even then, it's not perfect. There's still work that needs to be done. What I think would be likely is more tinkering, some refinement of some things that maybe got missed. One area that I focused pretty heavily on is municipal finance. I'm co-chair of our municipal finance caucus, and just recognizing again how important municipal bonds are and the tax treatment of municipal bonds, and also private activity bonds, which I think are the most poorly named instruments in history. I'm doing everything I can to change it to public good bonds, because private activity bonds sounds like someone's getting a special deal here, when in reality it's how hospitals are built. University of Chicago, their entire medical facility was built using private activity bonds. The intermodal transportation system in Joliet that employs thousands and thousands of people was private activity bonds. A great public good. But anyhow, we were able to protect that. I'm grateful that it remained in there. I worked with Dutch Ruppersberger, Democrat from Maryland. He and I are co-chairman, and we put together about 160 some of our colleagues who signed a letter to Chairman Brady and our leadership of the importance of municipal finance. So we were able to protect that. One thing that did get taken away was advanced refunding, which is an important tool in the bond industry, and more importantly for local communities to be able to see opportunity to make some changes there. So that's one area that I would love to see us go back and address. There's other things that I think are clear issues that got missed. My hope is we'll be able to do it, but as you said, John, there is the window closes quickly before elections, and I would say maybe even quicker than usual this year because of just how heightened these elections are. We've seen with some of the special elections, we've seen with the number of people who are retiring and open seats that are in Congress, it is going to be a really tough November. And so I think if we don't get something done, in the next couple months, it's going to be tough last minute. The one thing that maybe could change would be some tinkering on tax reform, and maybe infrastructure could be something that could bring both sides together. I would love that. I think that would be a good thing for our nation.
That's great. I think private activity bonds and dark pools probably tie for
I agree,
world's worst marketing themes.
Yeah, or high-frequency trading, too. It's one of these things that people just... there's a total misunderstanding and just so frustrating.
And
but anyhow,
the name is part
we'll
of
keep
that.
working.
So tell us a little about the Financial Services Committee. The thing I've only recently been spending a fair amount of time in Washington, and what amazes me is the number of discrete issues that are actually in front of all of you. It is an enormous portfolio. You're fortunate enough to actually serve on a committee that matches well with your background. And so how do you put that to use on the committee, and do your colleagues on both sides of the aisle rely on your expertise in those deliberations?
That's a great question. I don't think they rely on me, but I still talk to them, and I try and push my ideas. So my hope is that I have some influence and can maybe direct some of the discussion and some of the prioritization. I think that's the challenge. With the volume of legislation and information in each committee, it's picking priorities. It's what's going to rise to the top, what's going to get the attention and time on floor time is the ultimate challenge for us, and even more so in the Senate. So we can move quite a bit. We've moved over 400 bills through the House in the last year and a half, but only a handful of those have moved through the Senate. So that's always our calculus too, is let's have discussion, let's have debate, let's make sure that we're getting important issues out there and to have them heard and debated. And best as we can, let's ultimately get things moving into law, which is what we want to see happen. But figuring out the Senate is way above my pay grade of trying to figure out what moves them, what gets them active. So that is one specific thing that we have been working on. We passed significant Dodd-Frank reform last year. The Choice Act, a lot of good stuff in there. We've gone since then just to do individual smaller packages that we passed out of the House. Almost all of them, the smaller packages, almost always have been bipartisan, and in some cases unanimous going through committee, which is incredible. And so I'm encouraged by that. But my hope is, the Senate was able to act. It wasn't as much as I would like to have seen done in their regulatory reform package that they passed out. Bipartisan, I think it was 15 or 17 Democrats that supported that. Oh. That's great. So my hope is, what we've been trying to weigh is there anything more we can get? Does it make sense to hold back any longer to try and get more from them? What we're hearing is, my sense is we're going to move forward. We're going to take and approve the Senate Bill 2155.
It's going to pass in the House.
I think it will. I think it'll pass in the next couple of weeks. I think we'll pass that on to the President. The President will sign it. The reality is it's having real costs on real people and real companies the longer we wait. And I think what we're getting in response back from the Senate is get this done, and then we have hope of maybe another package, maybe a little bit smaller, a little bit more targeted, again, of these things that have gotten 45, 50, 55, 60 votes out of Financial Services Committee. So unanimous or close to unanimous Republican and Democratic support through committee, going onto the floor and getting 350 to 400 votes in the House. Those are the types of things that I think the Senate maybe still could take up in a separate bill. But let's not do anything that allows certain folks, maybe especially from the Northeast, who would love to kill all of this. And let's get some good things done. Let's get some real Dodd-Frank reform through, regulatory reform through, and hopefully build some momentum to get more things done.
And on our favored issue of the current exposure method, yes, and the so-called risk-weighted assets ratio for cleared derivatives, how do you see that progressing? We certainly really appreciate the efforts that you've gone to make people understand that these issues are important to the capital markets in the U.S. They are fairly technical and esoteric, but do you see the Treasury and the Fed taking action on a more prompt basis? Do you think something is going to get through the legislative process? What's your prognosis in that regard?
Well, yes, I hope so, and I'm encouraged. So this takes a little bit of time to talk through, to tell my colleagues or their staff, to help them understand why this is important, why this is something we need to take action on, or push our regulators to take action if they can themselves. So my hope is one or the other or both happen, that we've got legislation, and one of the good things of a week like this has been a district work week for us, so I've been back in my district, all over the district, but our staff, for the most part, are still out in Washington, D.C., and so Bill Hulse, my financial advisor, who does our financial services work, has been working with a lot of other offices, Democratic offices especially, to help them understand. We're getting a very positive response back. We were hoping that we were going to have a markup this coming week and that this potentially could be part of that. Just got word literally before I walked in that we're not going to do the markup this week. So I'm disappointed. I don't know what happened. It's not put off indefinitely. I think it's put off for another week, which in some ways is maybe good for us. It gives us a little bit more time when I get back on Monday to be working with colleagues to get them signed up on it. But I'm hopeful that we can get this done, pass through the Financial Services Committee, pass through the House. Not sure, again, if this is something the Senate would pick up. But oftentimes it takes our activity, having legislation that is there in written form that we can give to them, that we can say, hey, we're acting on this, that kind of wakes up the regulators to say it's not good enough for us to wait for the Basel committees. What I'm hearing is it could be 2, 3, 4 years before they actually take action on SACR, is that the acronym?
Yep.
So we need real help with the CEM now, and this does it. Makes sense. I think helping people understand of some risk weighting and delta weighting really is common sense, and it doesn't have a larger threat. It's very targeted. It will address the problem without creating further problems. So I'm hopeful that within 2 weeks maybe that we'll have activity in the the full committee and then be able to get the House to act. And maybe that's all it'll take for our regulators to say, okay, you know what, we can respond. We've got the ability to solve this following within these parameters, again, making sure that there's not larger unintended consequences, but instead it really does relieve the threat that really could happen, that we've seen potential in specific places where if the timing would have been a little bit different, it could have been much different outcomes.
No question.
And some distorted incentives right now with the way that things are written. So anyhow, my hope is we can get it done.
Good. Well, thank you again for your
Happy to do it. We'll keep
continued
pushing.
advocacy there. So let's take...
Can I say one more thing on that one?
You sure
So
could.
if you have relationships, any of you, with your members of Congress or from your delegations, if you could help us, just say, hey, this is important to our business, but more important to our customers. That helps us. And then if you can let us know, or OCC know, of who those people are so that we can follow up. That's how it gets done.
Excellent.
Sorry
Thank you
about
very
that.
much. So let's go a little bit closer to home. The Constitution of the United States gives you the hardest job in American politics. Every 2 years, you got to push the big rock up the hill again. So how do you think the elections are going to look this year? How do you think things are in your own district? And what are the sort of important issues to the people in our collar counties?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a tough election. For sure, to me, it's going to be the most difficult election I've had. I'm not one of these to cry wolf. I've got colleagues who do every single year as the race of their lives. To me, I've been really fortunate. Got to have a great district. It's they call it R+5, so it leans Republican. It was drawn by Democrats in Springfield to be a Republican-leaning district. But this year, we've seen that the other side, for me, my opponent and her supporters are incredibly energized, working, raising money. My opponent's raising money from around the country. So it's going to be a very difficult race. So for us, we're going to keep talking about the things that we've gotten done, the economy that we hope is going to continue to grow and be strong, certainly through this year, but hopefully for years to come. There's a new optimism that I haven't felt for a decade or more, of people excited about starting businesses, growing businesses. My own family
numbers look great today.
They do look great. You know, just the 4 kids my wife and I have, 2 of the 4 got job offers this week.
Awesome.
So my 16-year-old, Chick-fil-A, and my daughter, graduating from college, has a great administrative assistant job that she, I think, is going to take. So, you know, I think that just within our own family, we're seeing some really good opportunities. But also we want to see it career opportunities up and down. So I think that's going to be part of it. I also think there's going to be a lot of local focus, where normally we'll talk about the big national issues. I think this time, likely for our campaign, we're going to have probably 15 different campaigns. Our state rep districts will be focused on issues that matter to them, and what we've been doing. Constituent services really are important, telling that story of the difference we've made, whether it's veterans or seniors or immigration, things that we've done there. So, you know, I think those are the types of issues that are going to resonate. And then also trying to solve problems, real problems that are affecting people, ongoing discussion of violence that we've seen grow, certainly gun violence, but also car violence or bomb violence or other things. What are we going to do to address this very serious problem of individuals who are looking to do harm to other people? So those are the issues I think that are going to really matter, but it's going to be tough.
And tell me just a little bit in closing about how the Illinois delegation works together. Obviously, long history of upstate versus downstate, different political parties. It's always struck me that Springfield, our state capital, is a complete morass and hardly ever gets anything done. But the congressional delegation is pretty effective working together. How does that happen?
We've got a great delegation. There's a lot of things that do bring us together. I would say transportation is one where we come together. I think agriculture is another one that we come together on. Some of the human rights issues is something certainly that brings us together. And then once you come up on elections, it does become divisive. And so we're feeling a little bit of that, where people that we've worked closely with all of a sudden don't talk to us quite as much. So that's a challenge. But, you know, I think my hope is that we'll continue to find ways to come together, that we really do want to be effective for the people that we represent, and show real results. So that's
that's great, and we really appreciate the fact that you've come together with us and that you are really interested in our industry's issues. And we thank you very much for coming out here today. Wish you very good luck in November when that comes around, and few rows to hoe between now and then.
Yes,
so
absolutely.
Thank you very much for your time today, and thank you,
Good
audience.
to be with you all. Thank you, John. Appreciate it. That was great. Thank you.
The preceding program was a production of the Options Insider Radio Network. For more quality options programs, visit www.theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app, available in iTunes and on Google Play. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, facebook.com/The Options Insider, or via questions@theoptionsinsider.com.